May 1944. Normandy, France. Adolf Hitler built what he called the Atlantic Wall, an impenetrable defensive line stretching 1,600 miles along the French coast. Concrete bunkers, steel obstacles, artillery positions, minefields, anti-tank guns, the most heavily fortified coastline in human history. Hitler believed it was invincible. German generals believed it was impenetrable. But in a single day, on June 6, 1944, the greatest amphibious invasion in history breached it. 176,000 soldiers landed on 5 beaches. Thousands died, but the wall crumbled. By nightfall, the Allies had a foothold in France. By autumn, they had liberated Western Europe. The Atlantic Wall, built at colossal expense, defended by hundreds of thousands of soldiers, failed to stop the invasion. Why? The scale of preparation asterisk. Germany spent years and billions of Reichsmarks on the Atlantic Wall. Workers, many slave laborers, were conscripted. Materials were diverted from other asterisk. Hitler believed their projects. The military logic, the Allies would invade somewhere on the coast. The wall would stop them cold. Germany could then counterattack and throw the Allies back into the sea. The invasion would fail. Germany would be safe to focus on the Eastern Front. It was a coherent strategy, based on sound defensive logic. The deception success asterisk, the Allies used massive deception, Operation Fortitude, to convince Germany the invasion would be at Pas-de-Calais, further north. Germany reinforced Pas-de-Calais, left Normandy relatively lightly defended. The deception was so successful that Germany didn't believe the Normandy landings were the real invasion until days later. The weather factor asterisk. June 6th was chosen partly because of weather conditions and tidal patterns. But it was also a narrow window. Weather could have delayed the invasion. If delayed, Germany would have reinforced Normandy. The invasion would have faced much stronger opposition, but causing chaos behind German defenses. German commanders were confused, unsure where to commit reserves. The air superiority asterisk. The Allies had total air superiority. German aircraft were grounded. German anti-aircraft gun crews had limited ammunition. Allied aircraft bombed German positions, attacked German reinforcements, provided close air support. Germany couldn't challenge the Allies in the air. The coordination problem asterisk, the Atlantic Wall required coordinated defense. But German command structure was confused. Hitler had taken personal control of reserves. They couldn't be committed without his approval. By the time Hitler was awake and aware of the invasion, it was too late to commit reserves effectively. The Normandy vulnerability asterisk. Normandy was seen as less likely invasion point than Pas-de-Calais. The beaches were more difficult to land on, steep bluffs, rocky terrain. But the very difficulty meant it was less heavily defended, not where the Germans expected. The first hours asterisk, the first hours were brutal. American forces on Omaha Beach suffered devastating casualties, 2,000 plus killed. But forces on other beaches, Utah, Gold, Juno, Sword, suffered lighter casualties. The Germans couldn't reinforce Omaha immediately. The opportunity passed. The lodgment achievement asterisk. By evening on June 6th, the Allies had landed 176,000 soldiers. They hadn't broken far inland. They hadn't achieved all objectives. But they had a foothold at a beachhead, a position from which to expand. Once the lodgment was achieved, the campaign became one of gradual expansion. The German counterattack failure asterisk. Hitler ordered immediate counterattack. Drive the Allies back into the sea. But German forces moved slowly. Couldn't concentrate overwhelming force. The counterattack was repulsed. The Allies held the beachhead. The wall was designed for static defense. Once breached, it became a liability. German forces were trapped in fortified positions, cut off, forced to surrender or retreat. The strategic consequence asterisk. The failure of the Atlantic Wall meant Allies had foothold in France. Allies would expand inland. Germany couldn't stop the Allied advance. Western France would be liberated. Germany would be fighting on 2 fronts, Soviet Union in east, Allies in west. Germany's defeat became inevitable. The question asterisk. How did the most heavily fortified coastline in history fail to stop an invasion? Was it the deception, the weather, the air superiority, the command structure confusion? Or was there a fundamental flaw in the Atlantic Wall concept itself? In 1944, Germany faced a terrible reality. It was losing on the Eastern Front. Soviet forces were advancing. The only hope was to hold Western Europe, prevent Allied invasion, keep resources and manpower for fighting the Soviet Union. The solution, the Atlantic Wall. The concept asterisk. Hitler's concept, impenetrable fortified line along the coast. Every beach would be fortified. Every potential landing point would be defended. An invasion would be repulsed before it could establish a beachhead. The construction project asterisk. Starting in 1942, Germany began massive construction. Bunkers were built from reinforced concrete, 10+ meters thick in some cases. Obstacles were placed in the water, metal stakes, concrete tetrahedra, mines. Minefields were laid extensively. Machine gun nests were dug in. Anti-tank guns were positioned. Artillery emplacements were constructed. The labor force asterisk. Millions of workers were conscripted for construction. Conditions were brutal. Thousands died during construction. The work proceeded continuously for 2 years. Asterisk asterisk the extent asterisk asterisk. The Atlantic Wall stretched from Denmark to the Spanish border. 1,600 miles of coastline fortified. Most fortifications were concentrated on the more likely invasion points. The Channel coast facing England. The gun emplacements asterisk. The wall had hundreds of artillery positions. These could bombard ships offshore, could bombard landing forces on beaches. Concrete bunkers protected the guns, made them difficult to destroy. The anti-tank defense asterisk. Germany expected tank landings. Tank obstacles were placed on beaches, large metal obstacles blocking tank movement. Anti-tank guns were positioned to fire on tanks. Tank traps were dug to prevent tanks from advancing inland. The mine density asterisk. The beaches were heavily mined. Mines were placed on the beach, in the water.in fields beyond the beach. Some mines were designed to detonate when stepped on, others when vehicles drove over them. The mine density was unprecedented. The command bunkers asterisk. Underground command bunkers were built at strategic locations. These allowed commanders to coordinate defense while protected. Communication cables connected bunkers to allow coordination across the wall. The barbed wire asterisk. Extensive barbed wire was strung along the beaches. Multiple barriers of barbed wire, spaced to force soldiers to halt while being fired upon. The wire made advance slow, made soldiers vulnerable to machine gun fire. Asterisk asterisk the weapon variety asterisk asterisk. The wall was defended with machine guns, primary defense. Anti-tank guns, 3.7 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 7.5 centimeters guns. Mortars. Artillery, ranging from 10 centimeters to 24 centimeters guns. Small arms, rifles, submachine guns, pistols. The variety of weapons meant defenders could engage targets at multiple ranges. The troop deployment asterisk. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were stationed along the wall. Some were elite SS units. Some were Wehrmacht regulars. Some were conscripted foreigners and pressed troops. Quality varied, but the numbers were substantial. The supply situation asterisk. Fortifications required constant resupply. Ammunition needed to be brought forward. Food needed to be supplied. Fuel for generators needed to be delivered. Supply lines had to run from France back to Germany, vulnerable to air attack. The Atlantic Wall cost billions of Reichsmarks. Resources were diverted from other military projects, tanks, aircraft production. Germany had limited resources. The wall consumed significant resources. The wall was a symbol of German strength. Hitler boasted about its invincibility. Newsreels showed the fortifications. German propaganda claimed the wall was impregnable. The wall became psychologically important, but it wasn't designed to defend against invasion plus air superiority. The wall assumed German air forces could contest the skies. By 1944, German air forces were nearly non-existent. The wall lacked air defense. The wall was a coastal defense, but it lacked depth. Once breached, defenses inland were thin. The wall wasn't a complete defensive line. It was a coastal barrier. Breaking through it meant advancing into less fortified territory. By 1944, the wall was deteriorating. Insufficient maintenance. Some fortifications were partially completed. Some were neglected. Germany didn't have resources to maintain the entire 1,600-mile wall in pristine condition. German commanders believed the wall was invincible. This belief may have caused complacency. less preparation for alternative scenarios. If the wall could be breached, contrary to belief, were there plans to respond? The overconfidence in the wall's invincibility may have reduced preparation for its failure. The D-Day invasion succeeded partly because of military force, but it succeeded equally because of deception. The basic plan asterisk. The Allies needed to deceive Germany about invasion location. There were two likely invasion points. 1. Pas-de-Calais, closest to England, most obvious. 2. Normandy, further, less obvious, harder to land. The Allies planned to invade Normandy, but they needed Germany to believe the invasion was at Pas-de-Calais. The multi-layered deception asterisk. Operation Fortitude had multiple components. 1. Fake military units, dummy armies. 2. False intelligence, leaked to German agents. 3. Radio traffic, communications suggesting invasion elsewhere. 4. Physical deception, fake installations, props. 5. Prisoner interrogation, spreading false information. 6. Agent networks, spreading rumors through occupied territories. The dummy First Army Group asterisk. The Allies created a fake army. First United States Army Group, FUSAG, led by fake general, actually General George Patton. The army didn't exist, but it appeared to exist. Dummy vehicles, fake encampments. Radio traffic suggesting the unit existed. German intelligence reported, FUSAG exists. It's positioned to invade Pas-de-Calais. Asterisk asterisk the fake installations asterisk asterisk. The Allies built fake military installations at Dover, facing Pas-de-Calais. Rubber tanks, wooden barracks, canvas tents. Seen from the air, they looked like real military preparations. German reconnaissance aircraft photographed them. The Allies had turned German agents. German spies were now reporting to the Allies. The Allies fed false information through these agents. Germany believed it was getting reliable intelligence. It was getting lies. The Allies intercepted German radio communications. They created fake radio traffic suggesting FUSAG was preparing to invade Pas-de-Calais. German signals intelligence, codebreakers, intercepted this traffic. They believed they were discovering invasion plans through radio intercepts. Operation Fortitude was meticulously timed. Intelligence leaks escalated. Radio traffic intensified. Agent reports became more specific. German intelligence accumulated evidence, all pointing to Pas-de-Calais. They were allowed to reveal information, under interrogation, that invasion was at Pas-de-Calais. German interrogators were satisfied they'd extracted the truth. The prisoners had been briefed to reveal this false information if captured. Allied embassies in neutral countries leaked information about invasion at Pas-de-Calais. Neutral countries' intelligence agencies reported to Germany. Germany received neutral reports confirming Pas-de-Calais as invasion point. By June 1944, German intelligence had accumulated evidence that invasion would be at Pas-de-Calais. FUSAG was preparing the assault. Normandy might be a diversionary landing. Primary effort would be at Pas-de-Calais. Everything pointed in one direction. The deception was complete. Hitler himself was deceived. Hitler believed Normandy was a diversionary landing. Even after the Normandy landings began, Hitler believed reserves should be held back. The real invasion was still coming at Pas-de-Calais. Because Hitler believed Pas-de-Calais was the real target, reserves weren't committed to Normandy. Panzer divisions that could have been sent to Normandy were held back. By the time Hitler realized Normandy was the real invasion, critical days had passed. The Allies had consolidated their beachhead, committed reserves of their own. Even after June 6th, the deception continued. False intelligence suggested more landings would come at Pas-de-Calais. German forces remained tied down defending Pas-de-Calais. Only gradually did German commanders realize Normandy was the only invasion. By then, it was too late. German reserves remained committed to Pas-de-Calais defense. This deception directly contributed to Allied success. Operation Fortitude was not a small deception. It involved entire fake military units, thousands of people aware of the deception, months of planning and execution, multiple intelligence agencies cooperating, deliberate misinformation at the highest levels. It was a lie unprecedented in scale and sophistication. Without Operation Fortitude, German forces would have been concentrated at Normandy. The beachhead would have been heavily defended. Allied casualties would have been much higher. The invasion might have been repulsed. Operation Fortitude may have been the difference between success and failure. Operation Fortitude was an intelligence victory as significant as any military victory. It proved that in modern warfare, information is as important as firepower. June 6, 1944, 0430 hours. The largest amphibious invasion in history begins. The air bombardment asterisk. Before the landings, Allied aircraft attack German positions. Bombers strike defense positions, strafe machine gun nests. Attack artillery batteries. The bombardment is intense, but brief. 30 minutes of concentrated fire. German defenses are shaken but not destroyed. Most fortifications survive. The naval bombardment asterisk. Allied warships bombard German positions from offshore. Heavy cruisers and destroyers fire at bunkers and positions visible. The bombardment adds to the chaos. But some German defenses are in covered positions. The first landing craft asterisk. Landing craft approach the beaches in waves. Soldiers are packed in tight. Seasick, terrified. Some soldiers are cut down before even exiting the craft. Machine gun fire raking the landing craft. The first beaches to land, Utah, Gold, Juneau, Sword, face less resistance. The Omaha Beach catastrophe asterisk. Omaha Beach is defended more heavily than expected. Bluffs overlook the beach. Machine gun nests are positioned on the bluffs. As landing craft approach, German machine guns open fire. Soldiers are caught in the open, mowed down. 2,000 plus soldiers are killed on Omaha Beach alone. Bodies stack on the sand. Blood colors the water. The leadership under fire asterisk. Officers lead by example, moving forward despite fire, inspiring men to advance. Some officers are killed, others are wounded. Leadership from the front is common, heroic, and costly. The obstacle problem asterisk. Beach obstacles, anti-tank obstacles, mines, slow the advance. The obstacle clearance takes time, exposes soldiers to fire. But gradually, passages through obstacles are created. 12,000 plus paratroopers landed disorganized, but creating confusion. German reserves are uncertain where to commit. Are the airborne the main invasion? Or diversionary? This uncertainty paralyzes German response. The German reinforcement failure. German reserves are held back by Hitler. He's not convinced Normandy is the main invasion. Reserves that could reinforce the beach are instead kept in reserve for the real invasion at Pas-de-Calais. By the time reserves are committed, it's too late. The tank advance. Tanks are landed in later waves. They provide fire support, help suppress German machine gun positions. German anti-tank guns engage the tanks, but tanks are mobile. The tank advantage is gradual but significant. The breakout. By mid-morning, soldiers are moving off the beaches. But it's held. The Germans haven't repulsed the invasion. The critical moment has passed. The first day assessment. By evening on June 6th, 176,000 soldiers landed. 9,000 casualties. Killed, wounded, missing. Beachhead established on all 5 beaches. Supplies being landed. Reinforcements arriving. It's not a rout, not a complete success, but it's a foothold. The German command confusion. German high command is confused about what's happening. Is this the main invasion? Or a diversionary landing? Hitler insists reserves be held for Pas-de-Calais. Confused German commanders make conflicting decisions. The confusion helps the Allies. The wall's failure. The Atlantic Wall has failed, not because it was overrun by overwhelming force, but because 1. That the deception prevented concentrated defense. 2. The air superiority paralyzed response. 3. Reserves weren't available to counterattack. 5. The wall lacked inland defensive depth. German soldiers on the wall are shocked. They expected to repulse the invasion easily. German morale drops. Some units hold firm. Others are demoralized. The beachhead is just the beginning. The Allies will spend weeks expanding it, breaking inland, liberating Normandy, eventually liberating France. But it all starts with the successful landing on June 6th. If the invasion is repulsed, it may be weeks before another attempt. More German reinforcements, stronger defenses. But the invasion succeeds, the beachhead holds. Everything that follows flows from this success. The Atlantic Wall was built to stop invasion at the beaches. It failed at the beaches. But even if it had succeeded there, the problems would have continued inland. The wall lacked defensive depth, lacked alternative defensive positions. lacked the ability to conduct a fighting retreat. The linear defense problem. The Atlantic Wall was linear, a thin line along the coast. Defensive theory suggests depth, multiple defensive lines, ability to fall back and regroup. If breached, what came next? Very little. The inland fortifications. Germany had built some fortified positions inland, but not comprehensively. Normandy's bocage, dense hedgerow terrain, was naturally defensive. But Germany hadn't prepared defensive positions within the bocage. German strategy was, hold the beach, counterattack immediately. There was no plan for a fighting retreat. The counterattack strategy. Hitler's plan for invasion defense. 1. Hold the beaches with the wall. 2. Immediately counterattack with reserves. 3. Throw the invaders back into the sea. 4. Restore the beach defense. The plan assumed wall would hold, it didn't. Reserves would arrive quickly, they didn't. Counterattack would be overwhelming, it wasn't. All assumptions proved false. German reserves were positioned inland, but not optimally. They were spread across a wide area, meant to respond to invasion anywhere. But concentrated reserve force wasn't available. Forces were scattered. The forces that could respond to Normandy were insufficient. German panzer divisions were the counterattack force. But they moved slowly, were harassed by Allied aircraft. Bridges were blown up, roads were damaged. Some panzer divisions took days to reach the front. By then, the Allies had landed enough soldiers and equipment to contest the battle. The first German counterattack, June 6th to 7th, was repulsed. German infantry attacked. British and American soldiers defended. German forces were pushed back. The counterattack failed. It showed that the invasion couldn't be immediately stopped. Over the following weeks, the fighting became attritional. Germans would attack. Allies would defend. Allies would attack. Germans would defend. The bocage terrain made advance slow. Casualties were high on both sides. But the Allies had reinforcements arriving continuously. Germans didn't. German forces in Normandy depended on supply lines running back to Germany. These supply lines were hundreds of miles long. They were vulnerable to air attack, to partisan sabotage. Disruption. German forces were gradually starved of supplies. Ammunition was rationed. Allied aircraft controlled the sky over Normandy. German forces couldn't move during daylight. Had to move at night. Movement was slow, inefficient, caused delays in concentration of force. The air superiority gradually wore down German capability. By late June, they'd expanded a few miles inland. By July, they'd secured Normandy. The impenetrable beachhead had become a launching point for inland advance. The Germans held the city of Caen stubbornly. It became a focal point of fighting. But despite German counterattacks, the Allies gradually pushed the Germans out of Caen. The city's fall showed German inability to recover lost ground. By late July, the Allies broke out of the Norman bocage. Brittany became the next objective. German forces retreated. The wall's defense became irrelevant. The Allies were advancing inland. The battle was no longer about the beach. By mid-August, German forces in Normandy were caught between two Allied armies. The pocket at Falaise trapped thousands of German soldiers. They fought to escape. Most were killed or captured. It was a catastrophic German defeat, the culmination of the beach defense failure. After Normandy, the Allies pushed toward Brittany. Fortress cities like St. Malo were defended stubbornly, but they were eventually bypassed or captured. German defenders were isolated, cut off, eventually surrendered. Once the bocage was traversed, the Allies advanced rapidly. Open terrain allowed faster movement. Tank warfare became more effective. German forces couldn't keep up, were outmaneuvered. The wall's failure inland was complete. The failure of the Atlantic Wall inland had strategic consequences. France was liberated in months, not years. Germany lost millions of soldiers as casualties or prisoners. Germany was fighting on two fronts, Allies in West, Soviets in East. Germany's defeat became inevitable. The post-war world was shaped by Allied liberation of Western Europe. Germany's entire defense strategy was flawed. It assumed the beach defense would hold, and reserves would counterattack. Germany had built a fortress wall, but no fortress depth. The Atlantic Wall's failure wasn't just about fortifications or tactics. It was about command structure. The reserve authority *. Hitler kept operational control of the reserves. The strongest German forces, panzer divisions, couldn't be committed without Hitler's personal approval. This seemed logical. Keep the strongest forces under central control. Commit them where needed most. But it created a critical flaw. The chain of command problem asterisk. When the invasion started, commanders on the ground couldn't commit reserves. They had to request approval from higher command, who had to request approval from Hitler. By the time approval came, critical hours had passed. The opportunity to counterattack immediately was lost. When subordinates reported that Normandy was the main invasion, Hitler didn't believe them. He insisted that the real invasion was still coming at Pas-de-Calais. So reserves were held back, not sent to Normandy. The Rommel factor asterisk. General Erwin Rommel, defending Normandy, wanted reserves committed immediately. He knew that success depended on counterattacking within hours. But Rommel couldn't commit reserves without Hitler's approval. By the time approval came, if it came, the moment had passed. The communication delay asterisk. Hitler was asleep when the invasion began. By the time Hitler was informed, several hours had passed. By the time Hitler made decisions, the Allies had consolidated the beachhead. The critical delay was in the morning of June 6th. Hitler was informed of the invasion but thought it was a diversionary landing. He refused to commit reserves to Normandy. By the time Hitler finally authorized reserve commitment, it was late morning or afternoon. The Allies had landed thousands of soldiers. The critical moment had passed. The forces committed were insufficient. The attack was repulsed. And the moment for immediate counterattack, the time when Normandy was most vulnerable, was gone. There was tactical disagreement among German commanders. Rommel believed, defeat the invasion at the beach. The first 24 hours are critical. Von Rundstedt believed the beach defense would hold. Hitler sided with von Rundstedt, which meant delaying counterattack. The delay proved fatal to German success. Hitler and Rommel had a conflict of personalities. Hitler distrusted Rommel's judgment, thought Rommel was defeatist. Rommel wanted immediate aggressive action. Hitler wanted to maintain control. The personality conflict had tactical consequences. There was also disagreement on fortifications. Rommel wanted fortifications close to the water. Enemy would be killed in the water or on the beach. Von Rundstedt wanted fortifications inland. Enemy would be destroyed after landing. Hitler authorized a compromise, fortifications both at and behind the beach. This meant neither approach was fully implemented. The compromise was the worst of both strategies. Hitler refused to delegate authority. Commanders couldn't make decisions without his approval. This worked when Hitler made good decisions. But when Hitler made bad decisions, like holding reserves for Pas-de-Calais, the entire strategy failed. In fast-moving warfare, speed of decision is critical. Commanders on the ground can respond faster than distant command authority. But Hitler insisted on centralized control. Decisions went up and down the chain. The Allies, meanwhile, had more distributed command authority. Commanders could make decisions locally. The psychological factor. German commanders were afraid of Hitler. Making a decision without approval risked accusation of disloyalty or being executed. So commanders hesitated, asked for approval, waited for decisions. The fear of Hitler slowed German response. The alternative scenario. If Rommel had been given full authority over Normandy, reserves would have been committed immediately. Counterattack would have begun within hours. The beachhead might have been contested more effectively. The invasion might have faced greater difficulty. The strategic consequence. The reserve delay had strategic consequences. Allies consolidated the beachhead. Allies brought in heavy equipment and supplies. Allies established air superiority. The battle shifted from German favorable, first hours, to Allied favorable, consolidated positions. The lesson: the Atlantic Wall's failure shows that military structures matter. Centralized control can be too slow in fast warfare. Delegation of authority can be risky, but is sometimes necessary. Hitler's choice to maintain personal control backfired. Before D-Day, German intelligence should have known where the invasion would occur. But they didn't. Why? The intelligence failure asterisk. German intelligence was poor, overconfident, deceived. German intelligence assessment. Invasion would be at Pas-de-Calais, most likely. Invasion could be at Normandy, less likely. Invasion could be at other locations, least likely. The assessment was logical, but it was wrong. The logical reasoning asterisk. From a German perspective, the invasion location made sense. Pas-de-Calais logic. Closest to England, shortest sea crossing. Direct invasion route to Germany. Supply lines would be shorter. Logical choice for invader. By military logic, Pas-de-Calais was obvious. Normandy was harder, farther, more difficult. Why would the Allies choose Normandy? The German overconfidence asterisk. German commanders believed the wall could stop any invasion. The exact location didn't matter. Reserves could counterattack wherever invaded. The defense was flexible enough to meet invasion anywhere. This overconfidence led to insufficient preparation at Normandy. The air reconnaissance blindness asterisk. German air reconnaissance was limited. Allied air superiority meant German reconnaissance planes were rarely flying. German commanders couldn't see the Allies' preparation, couldn't see the invasion fleet approaching. The first warning of invasion came from reports of paratroops landing. By then, the invasion was already underway. Radar stations were on the coast, but they couldn't detect the invasion fleet until it was close. By the time radar detected the invasion fleet, the landings were beginning. The decryption failure asterisk. German intelligence had broken some American codes early in the war, but by 1944, American codes had been changed. Germans couldn't read them. So German intelligence couldn't intercept American invasion plans. German intelligence received reports from turned agents, indicating Pas-de-Calais. The agents were trusted. The information seemed reliable. German intelligence believed the false reports. The traffic analysis. German signals intelligence tried to estimate invasion location from radio traffic. Fake radio traffic suggested Fusag, at Dover, was preparing invasion at Pas-de-Calais. German signals intelligence discovered this through radio intercepts. They were reading Allied-planted false information. The assessment deadline. By June 1944, German intelligence had to assess invasion location. All the evidence pointed to Pas-de-Calais. No credible evidence suggested Normandy. German intelligence assessment was, invasion will be at Pas-de-Calais. Normandy might be a diversionary landing. The human factor. German intelligence analysts were human, subject to bias. Confirmation bias. They found evidence supporting their preferred conclusion, ignored evidence contradicting it. Groupthink. The consensus was Pas-de-Calais. Contradicting the consensus was risky. So analysts fell in line. The Hitler belief. Hitler personally believed invasion would be at Pas-de-Calais. He said so publicly and privately. His subordinates knew his belief. Intelligence analysts knew that intelligence contradicting Hitler's belief would be unwelcome. So intelligence analysis unconsciously conformed to Hitler's belief. The reality blindness asterisk. The reality was, Normandy beaches were defended, but lightly compared to Pas-de-Calais. Normandy was difficult to land on, but easier to defend than expected. The bocage terrain was defensible, but not fully fortified. Reserves were positioned to defend Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. All of this meant Normandy was vulnerable to invasion. But German analysis didn't see this. The surprise factor asterisk. The Allies achieved surprise not through operational secrecy, impossible with massive fleet, but through strategic deception, making the Germans believe the invasion was elsewhere. The surprise wasn't tactical, it was strategic. Germany knew an invasion was coming. The intelligence community failure asterisk. This wasn't a single analyst's failure. It was an intelligence community failure. Multiple assessments, all pointed to the same wrong conclusion. The intelligence failure was comprehensive. The lesson asterisk. Intelligence can be very wrong. Even when analyzed carefully, deception can be very effective, even against professional intelligence agencies. Confirmation bias, groupthink, authority pressure, all contributed to the failure. The consequence asterisk. Because Germany was surprised at Normandy, reserves weren't positioned for immediate counterattack. Defenses at Normandy were lighter than at Pas-de-Calais. German response was slower. The beachhead was established despite German resistance. The intelligence failure contributed directly to the invasion's success. The Atlantic Wall was the greatest fortification project ever undertaken. Billions of Reich marks. Yet it failed to stop invasion. Failed to protect Nazi Germany. Why? The multiple failures asterisk. The wall failed for multiple reasons. 1. Deception. Germany was deceived about invasion location. 2. Air superiority. Allies dominated the skies. 3. Naval superiority. Allies dominated the seas. 4. Command structure. Hitler's personal control paralyzed reserves. 5. Inland depth. Wall lacked defensive depth beyond the beaches. 6. Supply problem. German forces couldn't sustain extended fighting. 7. Intelligence failure. Germany misassessed invasion timing and location. 8. Tactical execution. Wall garrison couldn't stop determined assault. The single failure point asterisk. If any one of these factors had been different, if deception had failed, Germany would have concentrated reserves at Normandy. If air superiority had been reversed, Allies couldn't land aircraft, couldn't provide support. If naval superiority had been reversed, Allies couldn't maintain supply, couldn't land troops. If command structure had been different, reserves could have counterattacked immediately. If inland depth had existed, Germans could have conducted fighting retreat. If supply had been adequate, Germans could have sustained extended resistance. If intelligence had been accurate, reserves would have been positioned for counterattack. If tactical execution had succeeded, invasion would have been repulsed. But none of these were true. The compounding factors asterisk. Each failure compounded the others. The deception prevented reserve positioning at Normandy. The air superiority prevented German reinforcement. The naval superiority prevented German supply. The command structure prevented immediate counterattack. Together, they ensured the wall's failure. The strategic irony. Germany built the wall assuming wall would hold initial invasion. Reserves would counterattack. Invasion would be repulsed. But the wall was breached. Reserves were delayed. The invasion succeeded. Germany's entire strategy was predicated on the wall holding. It didn't. The fortification lesson. The Atlantic Wall teaches about fortifications. Fortifications can be breached. No fortification is truly impenetrable. Fortifications are most effective when combined with flexibility, reserves for counterattack, depth for retreat. Fortifications without air superiority are vulnerable. Fortifications without naval superiority are vulnerable. The defense and depth concept. Modern military theory emphasizes defense and depth, not a single line, but multiple lines. If the first line is breached, defenders fall back to the second line. The Atlantic Wall was a single line. Once breached, there were no effective secondary lines. Germany didn't have defense in depth, had only the wall. The resource allocation question. Germany spent billions on the wall. Those resources were diverted from tank production, aircraft production, infantry training, ammunition manufacturing. If those resources had been allocated elsewhere, would Germany have been stronger? Possibly. The wall consumed resources that could have been used for mobile defenses, tanks, air defense, aircraft, or military equipment. The manpower question. The wall tied down hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Those soldiers couldn't be deployed elsewhere. The wall garrison couldn't be deployed to the east. Germany was sacrificing flexibility for a fixed defense. The psychological impact. The wall was supposed to boost German morale. The fortress is impenetrable. Invaders will be repulsed. Instead, when the wall failed, German morale collapsed. The impenetrable fortress was penetrable. German confidence in German military was shattered. The consequence for Germany. The wall's failure meant Allies had foothold in France. Germany was fighting on two fronts, west and east. Germany couldn't defeat the Allies in the west. Germany couldn't defeat the Soviets in the east. Germany would be defeated on both fronts. The wall's failure made Germany's defeat inevitable. The counterfactual. If the wall had succeeded, invasion would have been repulsed. Allies would need months to prepare another invasion. Germany could focus on Eastern Front. Germany might defeat the Soviets or achieve negotiated peace. The post-war world would be different. But the wall failed. The counterfactual didn't happen. The historical significance. D-Day and the wall's failure were the most significant events of 1944. They determined that Germany would face two-front war, that Germany would be defeated, that the Allies would liberate Western Europe, that the post-war world would be shaped by American victory. The modern relevance. The Atlantic Wall's failure teaches modern military lessons. Fortifications aren't sufficient defense. Air and naval superiority are critical. Command and control must be flexible. Intelligence and deception are as important as firepower. One failure in multiple factors compounds into total failure. The final lesson. The Atlantic Wall was the greatest fortress ever built. It was breached in a day. All the concrete, all the steel, all the soldiers couldn't stop determination combined with deception, air superiority, naval superiority, flexible command. Will to win. History's greatest fortress failed, and with it, Germany's hopes for victory.